everybody. It is certainly my pleasure to be with all of you here tonight. And obviously, I was very excited when Michigan Sports Unlimited had called me and asked me to be their keynote speaker, because obviously adaptive sports is something that is very close and dear to my heart. Actually, I can't really even imagine a time in my life when I wasn't an athlete or competing. I started at the age of 8 years old in competitive swimming. I was actually recruited by a coach when I was 8 years old to start swimming. And like most young kids, I always dreamed of reaching the pinnacle of my sport, which for me was to one day be able to swim in the Olympics. But God had other plans for me. When I was 14 years old, I walked into swim practice one night and I never walked out. Our swim coach had us doing a new racing dive in the shallow end of the pool, and he put a rope in front of the starting blocks, and I jumped higher than I normally would off of my start just to be able to clear the rope in front of me, and instead I came down and I hit my head at the bottom of the pool in just 3.5 feet of water. So I was quickly taken to the emergency room where they had assessed that I had a spinal cord injury. And the words that I heard that night in the emergency room were very bleak. The doctors told me that I would never walk again, that I would probably require around-the-clock care, that I would need help doing even the most basic tasks, such as dressing myself and eating and feeding myself. And he said to me, in other words, your life is never going to be ordinary again. And I just remember that moment and being so angry and thinking, how dare you get to decide what the rest of my life is going to be like? You don't get to decide, I get to decide. And so shortly after being discharged from the hospital, I then went to the Rehabilitation Institute of Michigan, where I really began the process of rebuilding my life. And it was such a refreshing change, because in the acute care hospital, all they did was focus on telling me all the things that I would not be able to do anymore. And when I got to the rehab hospital, it was a completely different mindset. They focused on showing me all of the things that I still could do with my life. And one of those things was sports. One of the very first adaptive sports that I had the opportunity to try was when a therapeutic recreational therapist took me and a group of patients out to Pontiac Lake, and I got to learn to water ski sitting down. And it was just an amazing day. And I remember just having so much hope after I left that event that if I can do this, what other activities might I be able to do, right? So after 5 months of inpatient rehabilitation, I went home and life went on. I graduated from high school and then graduated from college. And then after college, I was working as a freelance reporter, and I was sent to Atlanta in 1996 to cover the Paralympic Games. Now, I had heard of the Paralympic Games, but wasn't quite sure what it was really all about. I thought, well, you know, it's a recreational competition, everybody wins, you know. And coming from a background where I was an elite level athlete, I wasn't really interested in that. I competed at a very high level, and that's the type of competition I wanted to be part of. I could not have been more wrong when I got to Atlanta, and I saw that this was truly the best athletes from around the world competing in this world-class competition. It was such an eye-opening experience for me, and I knew that it was my chance to fulfill my childhood dreams of wanting to swim in the Olympics someday. So I turned to my friend who was photographing the games, and I was reporting, and I said, in 4 years, I'm going to be on that Paralympic team. Now, at the time I made that goal, I didn't realize what a lofty goal that was going to be. You have to realize up until that point, I hadn't swam competitively in 15 years, but I figured it was going to be just like riding a bike. You know, I was a very good swimmer before my accident. It's all going to come back to me, right? Well, not so much. I had to learn to swim all over again in a completely different body, because now my upper body could no longer do all of the things that my lower body was so used to doing. But I got a coach, and I began training, and then competing locally and then nationally, and kind of moving up the ranks. And by the time 2000 rolled around, I was one of the top 10 swimmers in the world, and I earned a spot on the 2000 Paralympic team. And I have to tell you, walking into Olympic Stadium during opening ceremonies with 100,000 people in the crowd and all of the U.S. athletes, it's still one of those hair-raising moments that I will never, ever forget. It was just an amazing experience. Now in Sydney, I didn't exactly come home with a medal, but I always say I came home with something better because I met the man that would eventually become my coach and then my husband. So I didn't win gold, but I won a diamond. And my husband said he always loved coaching me because it really was the only time he got to be in charge. So I met my husband in Sydney, Australia. He's actually from Michigan, so I had to go fly all the way to Australia to meet someone who lived literally right in my backyard. But Sean began coaching me shortly after we returned from Sydney, and with Sean as my coach, he really took my swimming career to heights that I never would have imagined. In Sydney, I had set the goal of making the Paralympic team, but now it was time for a new goal, and that was to stand on the podium at the Paralympic Games. And I realized those dreams in 2004 in Athens, Greece, where I won a pair of bronze medals, and then competed again in 2008, where I won a pair of silver medals. So I had an amazing career. I competed for 16 years. In addition to swimming in the Paralympics, I was also a 7-time world champion. I have over 15 American records, many of which are still unbroken, and 3 world records, 2 of which are unbroken. And so after 16 years, I had to make the difficult decision that it was time to retire. And as you can imagine, it left this huge void in my life. I thought my athletic career was over, but I was wrong. I then discovered another Paralympic sport, para-dance sport, which is competitive wheelchair ballroom dancing. Now, what most people don't realize is that para-dance sport is actually a Paralympic sport. However, it is the only Paralympic sport that is not in the Paralympic Games. This past year, it was one of 11 new sports that they were considering adding to the 2024 Paralympic Games. We got through the first round, we got through the second round, and we got defeated in the third round. So it will not be in the 2024 Games, but we are still pushing for it to someday be in the Paralympic Games. Now, Paralympic dance has been around since the 1960s. It is extremely popular in Europe and Asia, but not so popular here in the United States. But it was something on my bucket list that I always wanted to do. And so, ironically, I received a Facebook post from a Fred Astaire dance studio in Bloomfield Hills. And the Facebook post read that they had recently hired a dance instructor from Europe who had experience working with wheelchair ballroom dancing. And if anyone was interested in coming to the studio to take lessons, to please call. Well, I immediately called. I was the first person to call and the only person to call. So in 2014, I started competitive wheelchair ballroom dancing, and I quickly fell in love with the sport. And 6 months later, I was competing because I never do anything for fun. Everything has to be a competition. My husband says, if you come to my house to play Scrabble, you better wear a helmet because I can turn it into a competitive sport.